Well, they're not very kind words, but members of parliament, we have them here and they're hearing what you have to say. I'm going to give them a chance to reply to what they have to say. Although I must mention that as we refer to them as useless, our question is who voted them in? I'll let you answer that. Now, Cindy says, yes, why not? And this is in support of the parallel rallies, as long as the rallies will speak to the same language with the president of supporting BBI, then I don't see a reason why not. We have Man Natif who says a big no in capital letters. I'll read one more. Legendary Ogada who says, I don't support it. If they can't unite for the rallies, how is it going to unite Kenyans? That's a discussion that we're going to get into, but keep them coming. Again, question is, do you support the decision by DP Ruto's allies to hold parallel BBI rallies? But before we get into that discussion, we also have the headlines this morning. On the Standard, it captures it as Ruto's ally kicked out. That, of course, is to do with the impeachment of the Kiambu Governor, Ferdinand Waitu. On the Daily Nation, it describes it differently, and it asks the question, why do Kenyans vote for clowns? Right. So again, there we have it in terms of what's happening. But let's first of all start with the impeachment of Waitu, and of course the political connotations that it has. But for the benefit of us, just to have a refresh and remind ourselves of some of the proceedings and what was said by some of the leaders, I'd like to listen in to what some of the leaders had to say before this impeachment was voted for. All right, and as we get that particular clip ready, let me start with some of the panelists that we have, and I'll start with you, Mr. Kioko, on your analysis of this particular impeachment. Did it get you by surprise? Is this something that you expected? The MCAs, or let's assume that Kiambu spoke through the MCAs, because that's where it all started. Then the Senate had a decision to make, and did it get you by surprise?
No, it didn't. I think first, we need to congratulate the Senate for having taken that decision. Whether there are people who are Tanga or Keleweke or whatever handshake, we need to congratulate Senate for having taken that decision. One, you also need to appreciate that Senate is a very incapacitated body, either deliberately or by design, because they oversight after the fact. Whatever was presented to them yesterday, and those who are arguing on procedural issues that the Senate was not enough numbers and all that thing. But there is a story and a narrative that has been woven, and Senate is part and parcel of our society. They had to do that. They had no choice. What would they have done? Had they chosen not to impeach, then people would have been far much harsher on Senate than on Waitu. So they did the right decision. But again, I want to go back on the oversight role of Senate. When MPs deny funds to Senate to exercise oversight and accountability measures at the county level, then what happens is events that happened 3 years highlighted today. And the process of recovery takes longer because we know what happens in our judiciary. So this is a story that will run for another 5 years. We have a good example of Governor Wambora. Impeached twice, went to court, the guy stayed, even got re-elected. Because either the court abated that system, by sustaining him. And yes, there's a lot of mutilation in Kiambu today, but we do know the guy will get an order tomorrow, or even if it is today. Yeah? That matter from High Court goes to Court of Appeal. You can't come today and get judgment tomorrow because David was there 3 months ago, and we must give David his day in court. So it goes on like that. So it will be there.
So in short, he still has a lifeline.
He has a lifeline. He has a lifeline.
According to the courts. And of course, it will boil down to the evidence that is produced. Let me come to you, Mheshimiwa Oluoch, as a lawyer, and maybe wearing the legal hat on what happened yesterday, and possibly looking at what chances Waitu has.
Let's go back to the beginning, because if you put it in terms of context, what happened yesterday had a progression. And I think if you begin from Uhuru's decision that, my legacy is going to be secured on the platform, among other things, on corruption. And he has been very consistent about this. And this has been very widely assisted by a decision of Ngugi, which was then upheld by the Supreme Court. Before then, I think Waitu would very easily have walked through this. I think probably Sonko is already sitting not so pretty already against this. And then we go back also to the handshake. So those three things, Uhuru's position on corruption, the Ngugi decision and the Court of Appeal, and the handshake politics. These three things played a hand in the Senate to hand over the impeachment. So that what you see out there in terms of the coalition, or rather the relationship between pro-Uhuru Jubilee leaning people and the pro-ODM Raila leaning people joined forces, and irrespective of the merits, let me say this, irrespective of the merits, Waitu was going to be impeached. And let's put a parallel to this in what is happening in the United States. If you listen to what's happening in the US, irrespective of what case the Democrats have for the impeachment of Donald Trump, the Republicans are simply not going to impeach him. The argument has gone on and on as to whether or not we should have witnesses coming in to give evidence. And there is a very strong case for this to happen. But the Republicans hold sway in the Senate. If a situation was there, the kind that we have in here right now, where we had a few people, half of Senate or just 10 people from the Senate, having a bipartisan or some kind of political arrangement with the Democrats, Trump would be very worried. So I think those things happened. But speaking now as a lawyer, outside of this, the position of Uhuru on corruption, which I support, and the decision of Ngugi to breathe life into Chapter 6. Speaking as a lawyer, listening to the arguments, I was persuaded that if this goes to the court in terms of procedural propriety, and this is now for anybody else who's going to do impeachment, please take your time to look at the law and the steps, because all these are handmaids of the law and procedures. You say, for example, that election petitions must be filed within a certain time. They must be concluded within 6 months. It has been held by the Supreme Court that when those timelines are placed in law, they are cast in stone. And I had the arguments by the council yesterday very persuasively that the jurisdiction of the Senate can only be invoked when you have carried out certain conditions precedent. Among those, did you have 2/3 members sitting and voting? Now, it was incumbent upon the county assembly, and I think this is very careless, that this procedural question of jurisdiction will be raised, and one, you don't attach the list of membership, the people who signed, any evidence of biometrics. And you know very well the rules of the Senate say that any evidence not brought before the Senate will not be reintroduced under any form of shape. So this is just for anybody else who's going to do impeachment. You have a very strong case, like I think they had for Waitu, but you're going to mess it up if you rush through the procedures.
All right, and I want us to listen to the Senate Majority Leader, Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, on what he had to say before the Senate went on to vote. Let's listen in.
So the moment I can see, we are not blind. We can do the arithmetic. We can see, Mr. Speaker, the patterns. Mr. Speaker, it's only sad that Central Province has produced, Mr. Speaker, former Central Province and Mount Kenya region, has produced the highest number of impeachments in this House. That is Kiambu, Muranga, Nyeri, Embu, Mr. Speaker, where we did 2 impeachments in Embu and even an impeachment of a deputy governor. Mr. Speaker, there is a very telling pattern that I have seen from other sources. Someone mentioned, a friend of mine, Mr. Speaker, who is a honorable member, that is it that in these areas the governors are more corrupt? Or is it possible, Mr. Speaker, that in other areas and other parties, the governors are shielded, Mr. Speaker, from being brought to this House? Mr. Speaker, this is a very telling, Mr. Speaker, coincidence, because for the time I've been in this House for 8 years, the pattern is that, Mr. Speaker, it's in a particular direction, in a particular political party or political parties. But one political party, Mr. Speaker, has never even attempted an impeachment in the county.
Right, Honorable Luch, you mentioned that the handshake does have a role that it is playing in all what's going on. Honorable Didmas Baraza, you've had the Senate majority there saying that we seem to be having people from a certain region, impeached or under attack or more corrupt than other regions. What is your take on this, Baraza?
First is that what I saw yesterday in the Senate, the debate, the discussions were dominated not by facts but by the various political formations, and that reflects how our politics is wired presently. And even if you look at the way the Senate has voted, the so-called pro-Ruto, and apart from Wetangula, who came in to vote against the impeachment motion, but the rest of the people voted for those charges. And but it was very clear that this motion was rushed. The procedures were not followed, and in law, once you do not follow the right procedure, then whatever that comes out should not be depended on. And I think Waitu will move to the courts, because we will be setting a very bad precedent in the sense that what happened yesterday makes us believe that the Senate doesn't have the capacity to audit the county governments. And I've been on record previously before saying that senators have no business summoning national government ministers. They should be summoning county government CEC members. Because what the MCAs brought to the Senate, this is something that the senators through the Public Accounts Committee and even the Devolution Committee, in their own time, they could have even found out. We've seen every time that governors are appearing before the Senate. I wonder whether they appear just to drink tea and engage in chit-chat or what, because these are some of the things which can be brought out. It cannot be that since devolutions was introduced into this country, we've had more than 9 impeachments. And these grounds are usually brought into the Senate by members of the county assemblies. But I have never seen the senators inducting a particular governor. I've never seen a governor appearing before the Senate of the Republic of Kenya, and after thorough deliberations, either they are forwarding the file either to EACC or to DCI for prosecution, or either taking actions that are provided for in the Constitution. So maybe going forward into the future, maybe we need to ensure that our committees of the National Assembly and the Senate, the secretariat that is attached to these various committees must be made of people who are either investigators and certified auditors to be able to assist Parliament of the Republic of Kenya carry out its rightful oversight roles.
Okay, come to you, David Osiani, but I want us to listen to the Honorable James Orengo as he made his submissions as well, and then just take it from there.
A very unfortunate case. Let me tell you, it's very unfortunate. Even me sitting there, I said Governor Waitu has been done a little bit of dishonor, because I think in a way he could have presented a case that would have made the threshold that is required. Just imagine, he had affidavits. It was like Raila Odinga. He was being told, you have 960 pages, but they are not before the court. 960. And at that time, the majority leader was very happy with the ruling of the Supreme Court. Now today, he's going to sing another song. I know some people can be very happy being in Mombasa and being in Naivasha. BBI, we support BBI in Mombasa, and in Naivasha you go, no, here, you've got to take a stand. You've got to take a stand. And for posterity, and in accordance with the rules.
David Osiani, one gets the feeling sometimes like the senators had to make a decision. It's like almost they had their hands tied, despite knowing that this may be appealed, and based on the evidence that they had, the appeal may fall through, but they just had to make a decision. I've also even seen some pundits who've said that they were playing to the gallery. Do you agree?
The reason I love Orengo is he tries to be on the right side of history every time. He has just alluded to a similar situation as Waititu's when Raila Odinga in 2013 had an affidavit of 960 pages that were just thrown out, yet they carried the crux of the matter. Do I want to dignify the processes and procedures towards impeachment, or do I want to celebrate that finally corruption is nailed based on the fact that there has been a clear demonstration of absolute graft in cases where a governor sitting in office allocates to the tune of 100 million shillings or $1 million and deposits the amount into the account of the daughter? What are we going to celebrate? Are we going to sit here and celebrate that, for me, it's not even a tanga-tanga as it's put here, Ruto's ally kicked out. No, this is victory for the war against graft. In a country where graft has suddenly seemed as a very beautiful and rosy thing, that the pathway to political leadership in this country is through the garden of graft. I was not entirely surprised, not really based on the facts of the matter, but because the ascension of Waitu has been as dramatic, his fall had to be just as dramatic. He had to become MP when Mugabe Were died. Then now another parliamentarian, Mushai, died in Kabete, became him. He's been a surprise kind of person who just, by chance ascends. Now, by chance, he had to fall. Now, listen. I guarantee you, now not speaking as a lawyer, as Anthony, but as a political realist who knows that this is the country that has a judicial system that has allowed a governor who did not have a degree, a prerequisite to him running for a gubernatorial seat, declared by the Supreme Court as fit for service because he executes his duties in a manner that demonstrates he has a degree. Never mind he doesn't have one. That's the courts here. I guarantee you that you need to join me in the next 1 hour to congratulate Governor Nyoro as the new governor for Kiambu. Waititu's case is cast in stone. He's not like Wambora. Wambora was not impeached by the Senate. He was impeached in the county. He was never impeached by the Senate. If at all, his impeachment was never gazetted. Waitu was impeached yesterday. Within an hour, there was a gazette notice from the Speaker of the Senate declaring him no longer governor for that county. By 8 this morning, I can almost guarantee you, Wambora will be sworn in. Now, he will go to court after the fact. So this is it. But I need to also warn senators. This is very good. Just ensure you're not corrupt when you become governors, because what goes around
comes around.
Honorable
Loch, is that fact that Waititu's case is cast in stone because he still has an opportunity to go to the Supreme Court and challenge that decision?
Actually, I think the first port of call will be the High Court. More likely than not, he will get a decision, but like my good friend here says, it will be after the fact. The courts will more likely, based on the procedural issues that I have alluded to, say that there is, on the face of it, an arguable case and may give him a stay. They may stay the Gazette notice, they may stay the appointment or the swearing in of Wambora and any other proceedings. But that's as far as it goes. Remember, in the criminal case, Mumbingugi's decision still holds. He still cannot execute. So for whatever effect that will be, it will only stop him from being defrocked from the title governor. But in all intents and purposes, because of the criminal case that is ongoing and the other decision, I think that he's still not going. So if you look at it...
But assuming that the procedures that he was talking about, the court upholds that they were not procedural, does that mean that then they can actually nullify the impeachment by the Senate?
I think what you're trying to say is, if the court, for example, finds that the procedures were not followed, is that what you're trying to say? If they find that the procedures were not going to follow, automatically then they will overturn the decision of the Senate. But the issue here, like my friend says, is what is the greater public interest. And if they follow the reasoning of Justice Mumbi Ngugi, they may rise beyond procedure. Depends on, I believe this will go to a bench. I doubt that it will go to a single judge. It may go to a bench, and in the end, Kenya is in that space where the fight against corruption, and recently you saw the president there, the issue has been thrown to the judiciary that you are the missing link. This will be overbearing on the minds of the judges sitting and deciding on the question of do we or do we not overturn the decision based on procedural improprieties.
Joseph?
Yes. I think, one, Senate played to the public gallery. Just like the DPP and EACC, they bring these stories first so that you poison the public or you give the public a perception about a particular individual, so that by the time an individual appears and wants to defend himself, everything and the tide has turned against him. But the MCAs in Kiambu missed a critical procedural step. In ordinary parlance, and he is a lawyer, at the preliminary level, Senate should not have entertained that on account of that. But they did, and they went on and finished, so that remove this baby out of me. You take care, the next person takes the responsibility for it. Now the pressure comes on to the judiciary. And law is a question of fact and law. That's what is it. Now,
but even within the law, there should be some form of reasoning, and I think that's what Mheshimiwa is saying, that there is a question of public interest here. As much as the procedures may be questionable, as much as there may be questions as to whether this could have been done differently and more effectively, there's also the question of what is the public interest.
But you've gone to a neutral arbiter. You've gone to a neutral arbiter. The High Court judge is a neutral arbiter. He doesn't.
Are they neutral?
They should be neutral. Actually, they should be neutral.
Correct.
Yeah? And because you've gone to a neutral arbiter, your feelings weigh as much as my feelings, so that he makes an impartial decision. Now, Waitu will have his day in court. Did Waitu do things that truly are unpalatable to the society? Yes, he did. We all have a position against him. But did the MCA rush this thing? I think they did. And you find it's the same thing about the war of corruption nowadays. You start something, not based on fact, it's a narrative. You take it to court because you want to paint certain people some way. You go, you meet a judge who doesn't really care. He just wants to follow procedure. He's executing his mandate as a fair, impartial arbiter. And then when he gives the ruling, everybody comes out and bashes them. This thing will be the news that is given to the judiciary to tie itself up. When they make a good decision by following procedure, they'll be told, no, you're harming the war against corruption. If they sustain, they uphold the decision of Senate and it keeps moving on, somebody somewhere will come.
Are we saying they're doomed if they do, doomed if they don't?
Yes, that's where the judiciary is. That's where they are.
Let me say this, and I just wanted to answer to the question that the environment under which the judges work and whether or not they're neutral arbiters. And my answer is a straight no. They work within a political environment, within a certain societal confines, and let's take it into context. For example, what Orengo has said there, the Supreme Court of 2013, based on the prevailing situation and the circumstances then, would probably have made that decision based on the affidavits that were thrown out at that particular time. Now, come back to now. The Senate has to face the same decisions when they have to throw things on based on technicalities. Let me use another decision. In before Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto ran for presidency, there was a question about their integrity and the ability to stand based on the ICC cases. Yeah. I was the lawyer that brought the first case, Patrick Juguna and Charles Omanga versus Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. And none other than Mumbi Ngugi was sitting in a 5-judge bench. And they made the decision based on the presumptions of innocence, Article 99 of you have rights of appeal, and they cleared Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto to run. Fast track into the Waitu case, and the presumption of innocence took a lower stage and the public interest came up. So really the idea that you're going to a neutral arbiter is that the political environment right now is that the fight against corruption is the bigger public interest, and the judges will be weighing on their mind the political environment as of now is that what will be serving the greater public interest as opposed to the individual right or presumption of innocence.
All right, yes, Honorable Baraza.
I think what the courts will restrict itself on is to find out whether the right procedure was followed in impeaching Waitu or not. They are not going to dwell into whether those charges were fabricated or not, because they are actively being determined elsewhere. So they will restrict themselves into the procedure. And I think the courts, being the ultimate dispenser of justice, they will listen to Waitu. And if it's clear from what I've made to understand by virtue of myself following the proceeding in the Senate, is that he was impeached by the county assembly that did not even have quorum. And I think, believe me, the court will have to listen to that person. They will listen to Waitu.
And at this point in time, we're going to wait. I mean, he has not even...
the courts, as Jedima says, will listen to Waitu, but not give him a favorable hearing. I mean, I'm not a judge, but I can almost guarantee you, because there is this simple saying in law that apart from justice being done, justice must be seen to be done. The courts will want to achieve that. And Anthony has elucidated this more than anyone else would, under the prevailing circumstances in which the judiciary has taken the bashing for being the weak link in the war against corruption, graft. I do not think that they will want to seem as though they are insensitive to the issues of the people of Kiambu, or the impeachment thereafter of the Senate, which has among itself very seasoned legal minds. And so I really wish Babayao well, but as an outsider, as a person who analyzes politics for what it is, and I started by saying here, these are the very courts that have left Taita Taveta's governor on the seat without a degree, when it is a prerequisite, it is a matter of procedure that you need to have a degree before you become governor. So if it comes after the fact, I doubt that there would be anything to redeem.
There is something which David said, that the case for Waitu is different from the case of Wambora, and he made that in reference to the Gazette notice.
No, Wambora was not impeached by Senate.
Of course, you said that for the Waitu case, there's already a Gazette notice from the Speaker of the Senate. But I want to tell him that where there is enough evidence that the procedures were not followed, the court of law has the jurisdiction to quash the Gazette notice. They have the decision to quash even the swearing that has been done, and they return back the whole process into status quo.
All right, and I want us to maybe slightly move this conversation, because at the end of the day, we have to wait for that to take its course.
Correct.
We're only, preempting and thinking this is the way it should go or might go. But there's also the question of the political affiliations. And one of the things that has really brought this to the fore is the Building Bridges Initiative, rallies that have been taking place, and the document itself. Let me start with you, Joseph, on the question of whether even the fight that we see against graft has those undertones. We already have, Ruto's ally kicked out. We have the Honorable Kiunjuri, who was also shown the door. And again, this is seen to be a fight against the deputy president from those pro-president. Do you feel that the BBI is also playing into this? Because then Kenyans would be left thinking, is this fair even for the likes of Waitu?
I think we need to separate the fight against corruption from the BBI thing. It needs to be separated.
But are they really separate?
And it must be seen for what it is, that the fight against corruption, and maybe so, is because the president is eating his own children. Yeah? He has gone to his own backyard. The president and the people of Kiambu, which is his own backyard, were at the forefront of kicking Kabogo out for Waitu. And in less than 3 years, they've gone so firmly, the guy is out. And even if he survives the court issue of the procedure are not followed, the MCA will the county assembly will reconstitute itself. The guy has no life before December this year. He hasn't. He will not enjoy that seat. So, and then you go to the Jubilee governors, because somehow it is Jubilee governors that have been taken to court. And the question is, and what Murkomen was saying yesterday, which really must be analyzed, Do you mean corruption is only within the Jubilee government?
And there are two ways of looking at this. There are those who could use the prism and say that it is the president living to his word. Because remember, the president did say at some point that I will not favor anybody.
Yes.
And for him to show that he is really active, he starts with his own, backyard and says, whether you're my friend, whether you're in Jubilee, I am not going to favor anyone. That's one way of looking at it. The other way, which is with the way politicians would probably want to look at it, depending on which side you are, is to look at it from the fact that the president is literally attacking those allied to the deputy.
I think there's a problem with the DP Ruto and his team. In ordinary best performance situation, this is not a good photo. Truly. The person the president has fired in less than 3 weeks, you
with the
appear
deputy
with
president.
him. These are not good optics, by and large. It only goes to argument the feeling that those who are corrupt are shielded under the DP's office. It goes further and hurts the DP's perception in our eyes, those of us who are innocently following this issue, and say, truly, this is not right.
It's something.
We are just about to see the DP and Sonko.
Or with Waitu.
Or with Waitu. And that cements, and that's the problem, that cements, such that they recluse, previously, long time ago, you touch a Kamba, we all go back to where Kalonzo was, and Kalonzo to defend us. You touch a Luo, they go back to Raila, for Raila to defend. Now people are saying, carry your own cross. Now somehow it has shifted. You touch somebody, they quickly go back to Ruto, whether by design or whether by default. And it is setting up a very negative perception of what Ruto is.
Honorable Baraza, your thoughts on that? Do you feel that the deputy president is not helping himself when we have, and I mean, we're in a free country, but of course we cannot ignore undertones.
One, my good friend should know that former CS Kiunjuri was not sacked due to corruption. He was sacked for other reasons that we are not aware of.
Incompetence.
Call it maybe, I don't even think it's incompetence. If it were incompetence, the PS would have gone. What is it? You get my point.
It's a particular
if it's not a corruption
it's
or
a particular
incompetence,
negativity. There's something negative.
Why would the president fire him?
There are very many things. Some other people will say that because of the Building Bridges initiative, now the president wants now to accommodate other communities.
Despite the fact that we saw the president literally, summoning him in public.
Exactly. Over the
there was already a consistent...
But you see, let me tell you, unless if you are not properly schooled, you will wait until the president himself says the reason why he sacked Kiunjuri.
So are you saying that we do not know the reason so far why?
Absolutely. We don't know the reason. We are just speculating. We don't know the reason. If it were incompetence, even the PS could have also gone. You get my point? The accounting office of the ministry is the permanent principal secretary. But let me say this as again.
Mheshimiwa, you're not being fair. I don't think you're being fair to the Honorable Ruto and his team when you push forward an argument that a standard 3 kid can quickly dismiss. We live by perception. We live by perception. Whatever reason that the president gave out, silently or by his action, which is very loud, to dismiss Kiunjuri. Just a minute, Mheshimiwa. It must be either, hear me, Mheshimiwa, hear me. Either he didn't support BBI, therefore he's against the president. Either he was incompetent in his ministry, that's a negative. Either, all the negatives. And then the next day, when Ruto, when Wachesa was sacked, I just want to finish this. When Wachesa was sacked, and this is something that I thought was very good on Ruto. Ruto has never been seen with Wachesa publicly from the moment Wachesa was sacked. And it's a very nice optic that I'm not associating with people who the president does not like.
Let me say
this is very bad.
Let me say this. At times, circumstances will force you to meet with a person. This was a funeral in Larry. Do you expect when you are at a funeral to someone, then you tell him, no, please don't come to me? The president has been on record, avoiding governors who are facing criminal and economic crimes in courts. But a few days ago when he was in Naivasha, you saw your very good friend Joshua Kutun hanging on his vehicle. I think they were discussing something. Yet everybody knows that Kutun is facing charges where he wanted to defraud some central bank. So at times the circumstances can force you, can make you, if you find yourself in a situation where you cannot run away from a person. You know?
I do not remember, though, Kutuini facing these charges. I think you're talking about Alfred Keter. Because Kutuini is not facing these charges.
Yeah, sorry, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah,
so we need to put this into perspective. Yes, as Joseph was trying to demonstrate, if at all every person who is fired, and I don't even... Mwangi Kiunjuri was reprimanded by the president for not paying farmers in time and selectively paying people who were christened as cartel in the ministry. Mwangi Kiunjuri, it is under his regime that the National Cereals and Produce Board decided to waste maize worth 1.1 billion shillings. Why? Because they were not stored right. Mwangi Kiunjuri had the power as the CS to have fired all the incompetent people below him. That's what effective leadership is about. Now, if he did not take the chance to do that, he should have rightly been fired. Just as I said here on this show, that I think having seen what happened with the ferry issue and that CS Macharia did not take action at that point, he too should have suffered the same fate as Mwangi Kiunjuri. So we need to be honest in deliberating about some of these issues. Now, if Mwangi Kiunjuri has been fired for his gross incompetence, then it does not serve the deputy president right to be the father of all the corrupt and the incompetent, that is our shelter in times of storm. It's not right for a person who wants to persuade the country that he can lead the country. Never mind, he has stated that corruption is not even an issue in this country. Those are his words. And I guess that is why the likes of Babayao go and gather around him. So we need to, all of us, collectively repudiate the culture of corruption and do not attach the war against graft on the BBI, because if Didymus knows that there is a particular case of graft against one person who is seen to be pro-Kieleweke, that is a fantastic opportunity to fight graft. Report to Kinoti under the glare of cameras and say, I have here today brought with me sufficient evidence that would cause such and such a person to be investigated. And if it is not going to be investigated, I put to you as Kenyans that Kinoti is not doing Kenyans justice, he is fighting a faction. But if we are going to leave it as, oh no, let's not go there. Let us join hands and fight the war against graft. It is good for our country, good for us, and good for our children.
All right, Honorable Luch, your thoughts on some pundits who have come out to say that this war on graft is targeting those against the BBI. In other words, those pro-Ruto. And of course, that is likely to muddy the water, so to speak, when it comes to looking at the BBI from a prism of objectivity.
Well, maybe you should ask DP Ruto why everybody who is perceived to be corrupt is gravitating around him. But I think for me, the issue as to who is being fought aligned to Ruto should not take away the fact that corruption is something that we need to fight. And then again, there is the other issue that you need to take into account. If there are people that are being shielded on this side, get it from me. Criminal cases do not have timelines. Criminal cases, and this year I said this before, the law makes it very clear. You remember Governor Kidero is in courts post being governor. So if there are governors who are being shielded, it's only temporary. It does not matter how many years it will take. If they are corrupt, these cases are with EACC, the evidence is there, they will be, it is just a matter of time. I wouldn't be worried myself about the debate about who is gravitating to who. Maybe it is a good thing that their cases are dealt with and they clear themselves in good time. So I think that's an argument that should not distract us. Now, if I go back a little bit on the question as to what befell Kimani Kiunjuri, I think it was both incompetence and also disrespect for the office that he was given. He went, I think, off tangent when he became too involved into politics. And this happened in front of the deputy president. You remember there were two burials where Kiunjuri, as the deputy president, was sitting specifically sitting and lecturing the president on how you should pay debts, political debts, citing the Bible, saying the way a curse will befall you if you do not return these favors, and you are cabinet secretary appointed by me, your president. The fact that the deputy was sitting there and not saying anything about him means that this is somebody who was speaking on behest and on instructions of the deputy president. So I think Uhuru Kenyatta had more than one reasons. And like he has said, I don't want to repeat them. There is a maize scandal. There were, in fact, other than that, there is the unresolved issues of billions of shillings which we placed to be paid to cushion farmers that were being paid to brokers and maize dealers who actually never planted any maize. These issues happened under the docket and the watch of Kinjuri. So he had issues about his capacity and capability, and then there were questions about him being too involved to the discomfort of his appointing authority in the politics of 2022.
And even showing up for a presser with Tanga MPs and ACS in Parliament. I mean, how base is base?
All right, and let me come to you, Honorable Didmas Baraza, on the question of parallel rallies, because that's a question that we've posed out there, and the rationale behind it. Just as mentioned earlier, in Mombasa, the likes of Burkomen, who had been very vocal against the BBI rallies, was there. He was somewhat welcomed, although there's also the question of whether he had to use wisdom, because obviously with that crowd, as a politician, you really have to have some wisdom to know what you can and cannot say. But why do we need parallel rallies when, first of all, we do know the Deputy President is on record as saying that, one, they are a waste of taxpayers' money, and two, since we all agreed BBI petition asubuhi, we don't even need the rallies. Really, it's something that should be already be handled in Parliament.
We were not interested in rallies because we felt that no one is opposing the BBI one.
But the tide became too much until
when we said we don't have an issue, but then we were told that people must be educated on the content of the BBI. Then we say, okay, no problem. Then the second phase was that we saw after the Kisii meeting, the Kakamega meeting, that a memorandum were being handed over. We found that there were new issues that were being proposed by the people. And then we said that nobody or no group in this country that has a monopoly to give views only. So then we mooted the idea of attending their meetings as well. And because now we understand further that actually we have new proposals that are being made through memorandum, then this one has now informed us that we also, as Kenyans, we feel the BBI was not conclusive in terms of capturing the things that affect the Kenyan people, our voters. So that's why we have come up with they are not parallel rallies, they are complementary rallies. These are rallies which we are also going to generate memorandum and also hand over to the steering committee, which is acceptable. Because if you are saying that we are in the mood of building bridges, that we have one country, we face the same common problems, then you should not have a problem with anybody having meetings. The same way we have said that we will continue attending all these BBIs rallies that are organized by Raila Odinga and his group. We will attend them, and we are also inviting them to attend our meetings so that we have divergent views put together to enable the BBI steering committee come up with a proper document that represents what the Kenyans want. You can only come up with a proper document that captures all the aspirations of the Kenyan people if you widen your net in terms of getting views from them, getting more memorandum. And I would even want to encourage even people living with disabilities through the associations to give in to join in. I want to also to encourage the Editors Guild also to do a memorandum on what they think needs to be changed. I also want to ask my good friends from the governance whether you have an association, the Association of Engineers, all these various groups in this country to be able to do the memorandum, because Kenya belongs to all of us. Kenya doesn't belong to one particular group, and we must participate into bettering these BBI recommendations.
David, are you convinced that these are complementary? I don't know if these are just semantics, but complementary rallies to ensure that we get information out there?
No, you know, Didymus is brilliant in his own way. So complementary is expedient for this conversation, but these are obviously parallel, diametrically opposed rallies. And I would rather, if you can't speak from both sides of the cheek, it cannot be that you say that these are going to be complementary rallies and that you want to build bridges, yet